Hello. It hasn't been very long since the last stream, which is kind of how I like it. I've been enjoying streaming pretty often, um, basically as often as I can, honestly. So we're going to be slightly. We are going to be plying the southdown babydoll and flax blend that I finished spinning on the e-spinner yesterday, which that would be one of the bobbins. We've got three. So one very partial one and then two more or less full ones. So it's not going to be a ton of plying, although this is fairly thin yarn, but yeah, even so, not going to be a ton of plying. But then I figure we might spin a little bit of cotton after, because that is what I've been doing lately, and it's been a lot of fun. So yeah, that's the plan. I'm hoping to make it at least an hour into the stream because that's how long it takes for my rice to finish cooking. So stream while my dinner is going, basically. Just gonna oil everything. Meant to set up earlier, and then yeah, time got away from me like it does every single stream. All right, one thing is I don't actually remember what way I was twisting this. It's a lot harder for me to tell on the e-spinner just because S and Z kind of doesn't mean anything to me. Like I know what it is, but turning that into an actual twist direction in my head is not the easiest thing. So we might have a false start or two. We'll have to see. I was waffling yesterday about whether I wanted to 2 or 3 ply it. I think we're gonna 2 ply it because I want more yardage, and also because if I were to 3 ply it, it'd be kind of, I don't know, a singles management nightmare, like the last one was a little bit. The last playing session was. So yeah, I don't know. Like it's not that it's super difficult to do that. It's just kind of annoying, and I'd rather not. So let's just keep it simple and do it 2 ply. All right. Yeah, that's definitely wrong. Okay. So I spun this the opposite way I typically do then. Which doesn't surprise me because I imagine I was taking the flax into account more than the wool. I don't know if that was the right move or not. I mean, wool is fine if it's spun the other way. I don't think it really has a preference, but flax does have a preference. Flax appreciates being spun the opposite way that most people spin wool. Don't ask me whether it's S or Z. I don't remember, but yeah. All right, let's just tie it on. I'm all sorts of awkward today. I had a really weird day at work, so I think that has sort of thrown me for a loop, like weird days at work often do. There we go, finally. All right, let me just see what I can do to get everything in focus. Okay. So this is a very uneven yarn, especially the first bit, because I was very much still figuring out like how to even spin it. So I don't imagine it's gonna be particularly consistent, and I think it's actually quite likely that I might end up with like, fingering weight at one end and then a little closer to lace weight at the other, which is okay. This really was entirely experimental, and like I plan to make a bag with it, but that's just because you can make a bag with anything. So um, yeah, I'm not expecting perfection by any means. All right, now we're going somewhere. The other thing was there's like a lot of slubs, partly because the linen or the flax at this stage I would usually call it flax. So partly because the flax is just pretty poor quality flax. It's got a lot of tow mixed in. Actually, I'd say it's mostly tow. And also the southdown is pretty bad quality. It's some of the worst milled southdown I've ever bought, and I just wanted to, get it used up. Hang on, I need to adjust this. My knee is already killing me. What can I do? There we go. So yeah, so there's a lot of slubs from multiple different angles, and it's like two poor quality fibers, and I didn't do a very good job blending it. And nonetheless, it's actually like pretty nice. I'm really liking it. It feels pretty nice in the hand. I'm really curious what the strength is going to be. That's the big thing, is because like if it's a weaker yarn, then it's going to be hard to make a good bag out of it. And then I might actually have some trouble coming up with uses for it. But I don't know. We'll have to see. We'll simply have to see. Even like shitty flax is still fairly strong, so. But I don't usually blend it with a very weak fiber like this particular wool is. Right, I'm supposed to be drinking too. I'm trying to remember to like take a sip every time I switch hooks. To stop myself from getting really dehydrated. So if you see me pause after switching hooks, that's what I'm doing. I'm really liking how the flax, like it really shimmers in the light. I know you guys can't see it at all, but I can, and it's very pretty. And it also is sort of an interesting pattern because there's not a lot of sections where it's entirely flax or entirely southdown. Like it's not 50-50 at any point, but like 70-30 in a lot of spots. And it's got this really nice like spiral marl effect. It also looks like I've added a tiny bit of a darker fiber in there. Because this is definitely not southdown. I don't know what it is. Oh, it's Black Welsh Mountain. I remember now. Okay. I wonder if I can. Yeah, so you see the darker barber pulling at this end? That's not visible really in the majority of it. It's just because I added that Black Welsh Mountain. There we go. Yeah. That's cool. That's going to add some interesting dimensions. I don't think I added a lot of it because I only just now noticed it, so it must only be at the beginning. Slowly winding back on. Oh my god, this buff is so dusty. Look at my fingers. Maybe you can't see it at all. Well, it's incredibly gross. I really need to clean my bobbins. Is what I'm getting from this. You do flax for TDF once, and your wheel is just filthy forever. At least that's been my experience. And it was like 2 years ago now that I did flax for TDF, possibly 3 years. And it's still, I mean, it's still gross because I haven't cleaned it, to be fair. It would not be gross still if I had at any point in this spinning wheel's life cleaned it. But I have not done that. I figure I'll clean it when it stops spinning? Question mark. Probably not the best way to go about that, but what can you do? Originally, when I got my first wheel, which this is my first wheel, originally I tried to buy a unpainted and unvarnished wheel. This one has been varnished with a sort of like reddish brown glaze. Not that that really comes through on stream, but I tried to get a like totally raw wood spinning wheel so that I could paint it myself, and they were out of stock after I bought it. And I kind of got slightly scammed into buying one that was not what I wanted for $200 more. And then I kept telling myself, like, well, I'll simply clean it when I take it all apart again to strip the varnish and sand it and repaint it, which obviously I never did, and I'm at this point never going to do. So maybe the next owners will clean it. Who knows? I think it's fine. I do wonder how much of my difficulty treadling is actually just the wheel being grimy, because it's possible that that's like a non-zero amount of it. It's possible. I don't know. I don't think it's most of it, though. This is actually going farther than I thought. Like, I feel like I haven't made a particularly noticeable dent in the bobbins, but on my plying bobbin, we're almost done with the first row of hooks, so that's cool. It's always nice to get more yardage than you expect. And I think this is only like an ounce or two, so it's not going to be a lot. But yeah, hopefully it'll be an amount I can work with. Going that way. It's not as uneven so far as I thought it would be. I mean, we haven't gotten to the third bobbin yet, and that's the one that I spun 6 months after I spun the other stuff. So I think if the inconsistency is going to show up anywhere, it might be there. I'll have to see. But yeah, it's turning out better than I thought. I think I put this project away a while ago because I thought it was turning out badly, and like now that I'm looking at it again, I don't really know what I disliked about it. Like it's nice, no complaints. There is bits of, I think it's probably chaff in there, or chaff, actually, I don't know how you pronounce that. but they're very pokey, and I keep getting poked by them. They'll probably fall out by the time that it's a finished object. So I'm not hugely worried, but splinters are a possibility. It's a very soothing yarn to ply, I have to say. Like, because each length is very different looking, but it all feels about the same, and it's cooperating. Quite enjoying it. I do really need to switch knees, though. He is not happy. Apologies for all the camera moving. It's sort of unavoidable, because I do have my rocking chair like up against the wall, so there we go. Maybe that's better. So I can't move that a ton. I can move it a little bit, but not enough. All right. Yeah, so we've done one full rotation of the hooks. And it's still going pretty strong. I'm not sure if I'm adding enough twist, actually. This only just occurred to me. Right, I was gonna add like extra twist because I think it's gonna be a weaker yarn, and then I have not been doing that. And actually, it's kind of low twist. Well, I'm not changing that now. It is what it is. Never mind. Forget I said any of that. I was doing some dyeing with some sage from my sister's. Well, it's not really her garden, I guess. I don't know. The garden in the house where she lives, which she had no hand in making. It's entirely the landlord's, really. But there's this huge sage patch. And last year, when I was still living there, I harvested a ton of it, and I made some very good dyes out of it. And I went back and did the same thing a couple days ago over the weekend. And I don't know, it's not as nice of a green this time. It's not actually green at all. It's like it's a pretty decent yellowish that's got some green notes to it. And I don't dislike it, but I feel like I remember getting a pretty solid green last time. And I can't for the life of me remember how. And I don't keep notes most of the time. So, yeah. But I'm slowly finishing up what little dyeing I have of my undyed wool. But here's the thing. I have a lot of practice dyeing wool with natural materials. Like that's really the only dyeing practice I have. I don't know how to do very much else, to be honest. But cotton is very different to dye with. Like, it's very different. It doesn't take dye the same way. It usually wants different mordants. It just reacts really differently for different colors, yeah. So, and I just bought 2 pounds of ginned cotton that I'm very excited to spin up. And I don't think I mind the idea of spinning white cotton thread. Like, I hate spinning white wool, but spinning thread is a little different. It's entertaining because it's thread. You don't necessarily need an interesting color there as well. But I really want to dye it, and I have literally no idea where to start. Like, can I even use the same dye materials? I have no idea. Do I need a new mordant? No idea. Well, no, I know I need a new mordant. But what mordant? no idea. So I think that's going to be my focus in terms of dyeing for a little while, is figuring out how to dye with cotton. Because I would love to get some nice naturally dyed hand spun cotton thread to work with. Like, that would be awesome. That'd be very fun indeed. I did do a little bit of experimenting with buckthorn berry skins on cotton, and I got sort of an interesting, like, stormy blue. Um, but it seemed like the color was going to fade a lot. I haven't actually been able to check up on it because I have no clue where I put it. If I find it, uh, hopefully I'll be able to judge whether or not it has faded. But even so, oh my god, peeling those tiny little buckthorn berries to remove the skins is such a pain. I think I spent like 3 hours, and I got maybe 2 ounces slash 50, what is it? 56 grams. Yeah, for 2 hours. It was terrible. So I'm not going to do that again, but there's got to be something. I'm really hoping maybe Oregon grapes can be used with cotton, because there's a lot of those around here, like just down the block and everything, even, and all over my workplace. Or even if I could just like sort of stain it brown with berries, I'd be fine with that. It's just like when it comes to actual functionality, I don't find white to be a particular functional color to make things out of, because it just stains so easily and it's so difficult to get perfectly clean. Whereas something that's like green or brown, you've got a lot more leeway. So, like, I'll spin it white, but I'm not gonna make a white blanket or something like that, because then it'd just be a nightmare to clean. So I do have to come up with something, and I'm not much of a acid or RIT dye person. I don't even know if those can be used for cotton. I know there are some. Obviously, there's some non-natural dyes that are used for cotton, but the environmental impact of that is not something that I'm particularly okay with. So, probably going to be sticking with natural dyes to the best of my ability. We'll have to see. Thought I was turning the tension up, but I guess I turned it down, maybe? Question mark? Yeah, I did. Yeah, I don't know. I'm all sorts of turned around today. It's just one of those days. Very glad to be home. I'm not sure what I'm going to spin next on my e-spinner, but I definitely need to give my knees a break at some point. And I'd kind of like to maybe stream every night for the next week. I feel like that would be a fun challenge for me. Wow. Why is this? Sorry, the tension is like all messed up, and I'm not really sure why. My first and only guess is that my tension band is not around the bobbin, except it is around the bobbin, so it's not that. I don't know. Just being weird, I guess. Anyway, I'm trying to decide what to spin on the e-spinner because I think I want to make heavy use of that this week to save my knees a little bit. And I'm definitely not going to spin cotton on it. I don't think that's a good idea. Maybe eventually, like maybe if at some point I get very comfortable spinning cotton, but I feel like the e-spinner takes away a lot of control over tension and speed, and also makes it really difficult to even judge the tension and the speed that you're working with. And I am not practiced enough with cotton to be able to like do that and get a decent usable result. So not cotton, but it's got to be something. I want to find something small if I can. Like I'm enjoying finishing up these projects, emptying my bobbins, sort of fast tracking my way to finish projects by working on things that I did 90% of the work on earlier and then abandoned. It's one of my favorite things to do. So I guess I probably just need to go through my wool bag and, wool bag. Wool bags, plural. I have like 30 wool bags. That's a problem. I need to go through those and see what's small and spinnable. And I've been thinking about it. If the cotton spinning goes well, and if I can use the cotton cards easily-ish that I've ordered, then I think I want to do that for TDF, like spin 2 pounds of gemmed cotton for TDF, if I can, on a supported spindle. We'll see. That might be optimistic, especially because I plan to spin thread, but it'd be really fun. I really love doing ones like that. My first successful TDF that I ever did, I spun about 1.5 pounds of naturally dyed by myself Cormo fleece. And the colors were beautiful. The wool was beautiful. I did not know how to prep Cormo on hand cards. Like I was new enough to hand cards and very new to fleece spinning. And I had no clue what I was doing. And I basically ended up with 2 different types of skeins from that TDF. One of which was basically lace weight, and the other one was like super chunky, thick and thin. So I've never managed to actually use any of that yarn because of my absolute failure to know what I was doing when I spun it, or more when I prepared it. It was the failure to adequately prepare it that caused problems. So I don't want to do that this time, but I also already understand what fiber processing is and does, which was not the case when I spun that Cormo. So I think I've got a bit of a head start on that. But yeah, what I don't want to do is jump into a project and then kind of ruin a ton of materials and waste a lot of time. It's not ruined, but I had been very purposefully making a set of naturally dyed yarns, and then you can't use them as a set because they're all different weights. So that was a bummer. Even though it was a very good learning experience, obviously, learned a ton from that, but nonetheless. But yeah, that was my first ever TDF. Spun so much yarn. And I was working a full-time job at the time too, and I was preparing the fiber at the same time. And I think we also had a heat dome. So it was 120 degrees Fahrenheit outside, and we didn't have AC. It was a whole thing. It was a very busy year. Hopefully none of that is true for this year. Those heat domes are not fun. We're almost done. Let me show you the bobbins. So So this was the slightly less full bobbin. This was the almost entirely full bobbin. And then we've still got that partial bobbin as well. And like the bobbin on the wheel is almost totally full. So we're getting way more from this than I thought we would. Which is very nice. Very curious about the yardage. My guess is about 150 yards, based on nothing. We'll see. One of the problems I often have with spinning on my treadle spinning wheel on stream is that the sound is so nice and soothing that I almost don't want to talk at all. But given the graphics, I kind of feel like if I'm not talking, then you're just looking at a screen with like 300 pixels on it. With very little else going on, so I do kind of feel compelled to talk, at least a little bit. It's kind of hard to find the balance sometimes. It's definitely easier when there are, people in chat prompting me to speak, asking specific questions, but then it's also sort of like I can make my own amusement, Perfectly happy to do this. But if I go a little quiet and just enjoy the spinning sounds, forgive me. They just sound so nice. I'm definitely going to need to change the bobbin on the wheel once at some point soon, which is a happy surprise. It's not packed down particularly tightly, I don't think, because I'm not spinning at a very high tension. So it's not quite as much as it looks like, most likely. I always have a really hard time guessing that. Because like every time you take the bobbin off, you have to retension it. So it's not really like you can just set it to something and leave it that way with this particular wheel. Maybe that's true of other wheels, although I have a hard time seeing how, but I don't know. There's many wheel designs out there, and I only really know one, so. But yeah, with this one, the tension changes every time I put a new bobbin on it. But then also, as fiber accumulates on the bobbin, it becomes heavier, which means it needs usually less tension. Is it less? Gosh, it needs a different amount of tension. Now I'm not sure if it's less or more. Maybe it needs more. I guess we'll see if I tighten it. It's one of those things where it's like, I don't think I would mess it up just doing it, but actually thinking about it, I have no idea which one I'm actually doing. I'll remember it when I do it again, hopefully. I'm kind of considering snapping one of these ends and putting in, like starting in with this with this third bobbin, the very last one that I spun, because I know that it's thicker than what I'm currently plying. I know I spun it a little bit thicker, and if I end up just self-plying this, there's going to be a really thick section at the bottom, or at one end rather, which I don't want. So I think I'm gonna swap it out with the one that has very little fiber left on it, and just try and do a tiny bit of damage control, I guess. There are applications in which having your yarn start out quite thick on one end and then end up quite thin on the other. There are applications where that's not actually a bad thing, and bags can be one of them. It's just you have to tailor the design a bit. Like if you have a bag, or if you have a yarn like that, where, say it starts out thick and then it gets pretty thin, you can always do the base with the thicker part, because, having a thicker base is generally a good thing. That's where a lot of the stress is going to be placed, that and the handles, right? So you can you can make it almost look intentional, and you can also certainly do it intentionally. Just, I'm just not sure I'd want to do that though. So I'd rather end up with a more even yarn. Hello, by the way. You're not staying long because of exhaustion reasons, but you'll say hi. Well, thanks for stopping by. I hope you get some good rest and that you enjoy the stream while you're on it. It's good to see you. We're just plying up the flax and southdown. I think it's behaving very nicely. I didn't think it would behave this nicely, but it's going quite well. So. We're mostly done with it, I'd say. There's about maybe like a third of the fiber left, and then I plan to do a little bit of cotton spinning if I can figure out how to set up the webcam, which is a big if. You were wondering how it turned out. Yeah, well, it turned out very well. I'm really curious how it's going to wash. Like, I haven't been able to test that yet, obviously. I'll certainly post a picture tomorrow morning if it's dry. But in terms of just like the feeling of it, like as a yarn, I'm liking it. And it's not as uneven as I was worried it would be, so yeah, I'm pretty pleased. Ever washed linen? Or do you have to boil it? I have washed linen. You don't have to boil it, but boiling it does help. The main thing that makes a difference with linen is abrading it. So I'll usually boil it because you do want to get some of the plant's pectins out. I think they're pectins, but basically stuff that makes it rigid is still on the fibers. And so you do want to boil it to remove those. And it also tends to lighten it a little bit, which is typically desirable if you're going to be dyeing it later. So you boil it for that reason. But then once you've done that, you don't really need to boil it again after that, like just to clean it. You can, but you don't need to. But the main thing is abrading it. And once you abrade it, that's when it gets really nice and soft and shiny and drapey and beautiful. So, and I don't think I can get away with abrading this. I also don't think I can get away with boiling it. I don't think I'm gonna do either. I think I'm just gonna wash it in really hot water and then sort of mash it a little bit, like do what I can to prepare the flax fibers, but I think that is probably one of the reasons why you typically don't mix wool and flax is because you can't properly like clean and soften the flax once it's been mixed with wool, which I'm only just now realizing. It's okay though. You thought collagen, but that's for humans. Probably pectin. Yeah. Collagen is an animal thing for sure. I have no idea if it's pectin. I think it could be pectin. No idea. It's something. There's some sort of jelly substance in there that comes out when you boil it. And it also tends to be, like the water from boiling flax tends to be very dark and have an interesting, like woody, leafy smell. It's not bad. Like, I wouldn't smell it for fun necessarily, but of all the things that I boiled on the stove for fiber purposes, it's one of the less offensive ones for sure. This bobbin is almost full. I do wish that I could fit the last little bit on it, but I don't think it's worth trying to play bobbin chicken. I so rarely win bobbin chicken, and usually I lose it by letting the fiber jump the hook, and then it's a huge tangle, so I don't think I'm going to play that game today. Got a little bit of space left, but not much. Not quite enough to finish on, sadly. But I think I'll just take it as close to the bobbin as I can. I also found out that there's another kind of fiber in here, which I totally forgot I added. But I added some Black Welsh Mountain, like stripes at some points, and it had been obscured by the rest of the fiber on the bobbins, so I totally forgot about it. But it looks really cool. It's got basically these like black stripes in it, like black barber pole stripes, just very occasionally, and I think it looks very pretty. I don't know if it's actually going to show up because the yarn's pretty thin, and barber pulling on thin yarn, if it's open work, you often don't see stripes. But it should be fun to work with anyway, which is the main thing. Probably another reason that it's not often advised to mix flax and wool is that you can't really wet spin this stuff, so it's very hairy because I'm not wet spinning it. If I were to wet spin it, the wool would definitely look and behave a lot different than it is. I'm I kind of wish I'd wet spun a little sample, and I might at some point give it a shot, just out of curiosity. But I chose to dry spin it for reasons unknown. And it's like, I feel like it definitely look and feel very different wet spun. So I almost want to see both ends of the spectrum, you know. It's too late now, though. You have to do it while you're actually spinning it. What happens to wool if you wet spin it? You guess not good, but how? For one thing, it does depend on the wool. Hang on, I've got. Oh, glad I paused right there because it was totally about to overflow. It depends on the wool, but I found that you tend to lose the springiness and the elasticity a little bit. And then additionally, you can sometimes felt it depending on how you're holding it, depending on how wet your hands are, just like you're sort of creating conditions in which you can accidentally felt yarn as you're spinning it, which is typically not what people are going for. Here is the first finished bobbin, by the way. Yeah, so it compacts it down in a similar way that, oh, it's not stable, in a similar way that wet spinning flax does, except you don't really want that with wool. You want that with flax. And then the other thing is that it's sort of like petting an animal when your hands are wet, in that your hands get totally covered in fur and hair, and it's just really gross. That also happens if you wet spin wool. And that alone is reason to not do it to me. So, yeah, it is always a risk of felting. And thank you. I think it's really coming along. And there's almost nothing left, by the way. There's like tiny bits of 3 bobbins. So just a little left, and then probably cotton spinning time. At least briefly, if I can figure it out. Hi, Chuck. She's arrived. She's here. Yeah, really the wet fur thing is like the main reason not to wet spin wool. It gets really gross. And it can also, again, depending on how hot your hands are, it can have some interesting interactions with the lanolin in the wool. It's worth trying if you're curious, to be honest. Like, especially because you can try just a tiny bit and see what it's like. It's certainly an experience, but it's not a great way to spin large amounts of yarn, in my opinion. Okay. Chuck's so mad at me. She wants me to be sleeping. She's like, "You're home. Get in bed. Go to sleep so I can sleep on top of you." Like, come on, man. I want to have a life. Okay, yeah. So you definitely increase the take up as, like, you have to increase the amount of tension as more fiber goes onto the bobbins. I'd forgotten which way that worked. And I just put this new bobbin on and started spinning. And I had set it back to a similar tension to what I was at when I took that first bobbin off, and it was like yanking the yarn out of my hands. So yeah, good to know. I'd forgotten. I do kind of wish that I'd had a chance to try Irish tension. I'm pretty sure what I'm using right now is not Irish tension. There's two main types of tensioning, and I've only ever used one of them because this is a single drive wheel, not a double drive. And I know the tensioning is different on one versus the other, and I'm curious if I'm using the more fiddly method or not. Sorry, that's my rice cooker. We're gonna ignore that though. Yeah, I'm curious about it, but this is the only spinning wheel other than my e-spinner that I've ever actually spun on. I've hung out with friends while they spun on their wheels, but I've never actually tried anyone else's wheel before, so I'm curious. I don't know how much I count the e-spinner as a wheel. Like, it feels like it's certainly a spinning device. I would not say it's not a spinning device. But like, wheel to me really just implies like this and not a little doohickey type thing that you plug into the laptop. I don't know. And like, additionally, there's no actual wheel on my e-spinner. There are no wheels anywhere on it. There's discs, but there's not wheels. So on the other hand, it's not a spindle. Yeah, exactly. It's interesting. Like, it definitely sits in the middle of the two. It's not a spindle. It's not a spinning wheel. You know, I saw a really cool e-spinner on this. It's like a video, I think, of a spinning class in, I'm pretty sure, Russia, because they were speaking Russian. And I'm fairly sure from the early 90s, or sorry, not early 90s, late 90s or early aughts, or at least they were using tools from then. And one of the things that they had, like, other than a whole bunch of beautiful and incredibly scrappy looking wheels that I loved, one of the things that they had was an e-spinner that looked shockingly like a fax machine. They didn't show it in motion very much, like just briefly, just enough to know that it was clearly an e-spinner. But I'm so obsessed with it. Like, it literally just looked like a fax machine and someone was spinning yarn on it. It was so cool. I would love to get my hands on something like that. And it's like, I would not in any world consider that a wheel either. And also, a fax machine is clearly not a spindle. So it's still, like, there are so many forms of e-spinner, and I think none of them are wheels and none of them are spindles. They're their own little thing. It looks rather wheelless, yep. Fax machine, famously not a spindle. Exactly, that's what I'm saying. I haven't seen an actual fax machine in so long. We have one at my work. Like, I work at a medical clinic, so you kind of have to have a fax machine at a certain point. But we only have one, and it's in the medical records department. I've never actually seen it. The last time I saw a fax machine has to have been like at my mom's office when I was a little kid. It's odd how much technology has changed since then. Like, almost unrecognizably different. On the other hand, spindles stay the same for the most part. All right, there's just a tiny bit left. So I'm just gonna make a very awkward plying bracelet while not detaching the other end of this, which is fiddly and annoying, but I kind of prefer doing it so that I don't have to, like, reattach the end. again. I feel like it's a little neater too. Really, the only difference is that I have the 2-ply basically pins to my knee with my palm over it, and then I'm simply awkwardly wrapping around my hands to make the plying bracelet while not lifting my palm up. You think we've used a fax machine exactly once as a child. Yep, that checks out. I've never actually used a fax machine myself. They're a little bit before my time. I mean, we had dial-up internet for quite a long time, and other, like a home phone, a VHS player, a record player, tape players, like other relics of the time, but it's not like most people had a home fax machine, at least to my knowledge. So I think they're one of the less understood and less remembered, except by like Gen Xers. I am not a Gen Xer, so there we go. Okay. Yeah, it's always a slightly painful process doing this, just in terms of it being so fiddly and slightly annoying, but it does work. That's what matters. And this way there's just one end to attach. And also, like, it helps when you don't have anywhere to put it. Like anything to do with the loose end of the fiber, because you never put it down basically with this method, so it sort of helps. Internet that you couldn't use while using the phone. Yeah, I remember that. I got kicked off Neopets so many times because my parents had to make an important phone call. Those were the days. I complained so hard. I was outraged by it. I was like, what could possibly be more important than my Neopets? Come on. God, I miss Club Penguin too. I was just thinking about Club Penguin the other day. I miss it so bad. I'm sad it's like not. It's never coming back. It was a good website though. We're done. We did it. Let me just switch out the bobbins, and then I'll wind it on and count the yardage because I'm really curious. Okay. So here's what we ended up with. Now that I'm looking at it, I think I maybe could have fit that last bit on. Maybe, but I don't think it was worth it to try. So I'm not too bothered. All right. Should probably drink real quick. Take my edible. Okay. Now I'm ready to ply. Or, no. Now I'm ready to wind yarn onto the nitty-gritty. That's what we're actually doing. Been a long day. My might just move the camera a little. So that you can actually somewhat see the nitty noddy. I have to say, out of all of the spinning related purchases that I've made, of which there are many, the nitty noddy is the one thing where I'm like, I chose perfect nitty noddy. There's nothing I could have done that would have improved this nitty noddy other than painting it, which I already did. And I love how it looks. And it's like, I got a 2-yard nitty noddy, which is perfect for the size of skeins that I often make. And you can easily make a 2-yard nitty noddy, a 1-yard nitty noddy, and you're winding on half of it. So you can make smaller skeins too. Yeah, I'm so pleased with this nitty noddy. Like with my spinning wheel, with my e-spinner, with my blending board, my hand cards, all of those, I'm like, I could have done something different. But with this nitty noddy, nope. Perfect tool. All right, so that's this first little bobbin done. The good news, which I wasn't sure if it would be the case or not, because of the fact that it's half flax, half southdown. But the good news is that it's not too difficult to felt back together. But that does confirm my suspicions that I absolutely should not boil it, because I think it'll felt. Like the flax is clearly not enough to stop it from felting by hand. So I don't think it would be in a saucepan either. So. Your mom said your grandma just used a chair back for skeins, but that's quickly, hang on, I can't read it all. That's quickly very handy. Yeah, you know, I used a chair back for a really long time too. And like, they do work really well. You can really use almost anything as a nitty noddy, but the portability and the fact that you have to do no math is just like, it's it's a very worthwhile trade-off for having a small random contraption in your home. For sure. That, and I think it's an awful lot more ergonomic to wind, because when you're winding around a chair, one thing, you kind of have to either be standing or find a comfortable way to sit, and then you're just doing the exact same motion over and over again. Whereas with the nitty noddy, you can change it up. Like you can do it at all different angles and stuff if you need to. So but really it's the math, or the lack of math. Yeah, I know. This is one of the few areas where you can remove math from the equation in a hobby that is otherwise chock full of math. I really wish I'd paid a little bit more attention to math, like when I was in school, because I vividly remember thinking, like once I'd gotten past the point of multiplication and division, I vividly remember thinking, I'm never going to use this. And it turns out that algebra actually does have real life applications, a lot of them. And like I can still do algebra, thankfully, but I never really figured out like geometry or trig very well, and I wish I had. I wish someone had told me, like, you need these to knit. So my guess when I started plying this was 150 yards / meters. I think they're close enough to sort of guess them interchangeably, honestly. And I have no idea if I'm right or not. There's like I could see it being more than 150 by a lot or less than 150 by a lot. I'm very unsure. This is definitely an arm workout. I have a memory of history classes on the first traces of writing we found were maths and were probably related to agricultural, like for counting and buying cattle. But now I wonder if that wasn't fiber related. That's a good point. Like, counting sheep is good and all, but I feel like being able to measure being able to count so that you know exactly how much of something you need to make like a shirt for yourself is pretty valuable too. Like that means you're not wasting time remeasuring all the time, right? And if you can write it down, then you don't have to worry about forgetting. You don't have to worry about losing your one measuring string that you use for everything. Like, yeah, I think you've got a good point. That's the first thing I'd be counting. Almost there. Oh my gosh. So much of it. I do really like the sound that bobbins make when they're on the lazy Kate and you're unwinding yarn from them. Like it almost sounds like the spinning wheel. You know? Yeah, big fan of that noise. Yeah, it's a good rattle. You know what else makes really good rattles, by the way? And I say this because when I learned, I was incredibly delighted. But crows make these rattling noises to each other. And they typically do it with crows that they're more intimate with, like family members or close crow friends, or mates or something like that. So you don't hear it very often because it's not how they typically communicate. But sometimes you see some crows rattling to each other, and it sounds like two pieces of wood being hit together in quick succession. And it's just the most delightful thing. It makes me so happy. I really like crows. I see so much of them because I live in the city. They're like the main bird that I see, so I'm a big fan. But they're also they're so sweet to each other. Except when they want to be jerks, and then they're so funnily mean to each other. You hear crows at your window a lot, but you don't think you've ever heard that. Yeah, it's a lot quieter than the cawing. So you have to get lucky with it being close enough for you to hear it, and enough like not too much background noise. I've only heard it a few times, and I think I've seen crows do it more times than I've actually heard it. All right. I want to count this again. So I think I'm gonna do what I did last time and just aimlessly treadle so that there's some nice noises. Because I like the noises, so pardon me while I count briefly. Wow. I was pretty close. There are 88 strands. So multiply that by 2, and that is 176 yards. I was guessing 150, so I'm actually not far off, which is purely random because I'm never accurate with that. They're proper fairy tale tricksters. That's so true. Crows are so awesome. I'm really liking it. I wonder if I can, hang on. Yeah, I don't know how well you can see it, but yeah, this turned out quite nicely. I hope I'm not keeping you, by the way. I know you said you were tired. If you want to hop off before I end the stream, I will certainly not be offended. But also, it's always nice to have your company, so I'm just saying. Don't stay up on my account. I know that like the time that I usually pick to stream is like middle of the night for pretty much everyone else on Earth. I just like I could technically do this before I leave for work, and have it be middle of the afternoon for everyone else, but I don't want to wake up even earlier, so probably never gonna do that. Had an impulse to squish it. Yeah, it's really squishy actually. I didn't think it would be as squishy because flax is not typically a squishy thing, but this is very squishy. It's quite nice. So I think I might try to do just a tiny bit of cotton spinning. If I can figure out how to set up or like where to put the spindle versus the webcam. Just because I spent all day spinning cotton. I was answering voicemails at work for most of the day, and I have a headset, so I can, unless I'm like actually typing something, I was pretty much just spinning cotton thread while on the phone with people all day. So I'm really feeling it. I'm really enjoying my cotton spinning. I don't know if I'll actually be able to, though. I'll have to see. If I were willing to actually put my face in the shot, it would be different. But my face is not the interesting thing going on here, so I don't want to do that. Might just spin a tiny, tiny bit. I'm glad the time works for you. That does explain why you're able to come to mini streams. I figure if it was like literally like a crazy time when you'd normally be asleep, then you would not be doing this as often. So I'm glad it's at a good time for you because I quite enjoy your company on stream. And yeah, the bowl setup is, I don't know if it's just me who has this problem, but if I just do one bowl, especially like a pretty light one, it just slides away constantly. They all do that. I don't know why. Whereas if I have a bowl inside another bowl, then the small one will slide around inside the big one, but the big one won't go anywhere. So that's a lot less sliding than it could be. So yeah. So my goal at the moment, I need to adjust adjust how I'm sitting. My goal at the moment is pretty much just to... Oh, that's better. I wish I'd done that a while ago. It's just to finish up this small puni that I made. This is like the last, I don't know, half or third of it maybe. Not quite sure. I don't really remember how big it was to begin with, but not very big. And I've spun the majority of it. And I just want to see if I can fit a full one on the spindle, like on one of these little spindles. Just to see. It doesn't even mean anything really, because I'm sure that they're going to be different sizes once my cotton cards come in. I think I'll be able to pack a little bit more on there. But nonetheless, I wanted to try this since I made this spindle, so I'm going to actually see if I can this time. Last time I accidentally spilled some wine, some mulled wine on my spindle, and I decided to just pull it off and ply it rather than like potentially letting it mold, which would be an absolute nightmare. So I never actually finished that one. This is actually not too terrible in terms of the angle and everything. Yeah. Shockingly, it didn't really do any harm. Like, you can't really tell where the wine spilled. It's just a tiny bit of like the occasional speckling of slightly darker off-white. And this puni anyway is mixed with a little bit of wool because my hand cards were not clean at the time. So it's really not going to show up at all. Did it smell alcoholic then? Yes. Yes, and not in a good way. It smelled like old wine until I washed it. Once I washed it, it didn't smell like anything, and that's when most of the stain came out too. But before that, yeah, it didn't smell great. It also kind of stained the spindle, although I've since sanded it, not to remove the stain. I didn't really care about that. Just because I hadn't sanded it the first time when I made it. I couldn't find any of my sanding blocks, so yeah. So there's really no evidence left. Proof that wine doesn't always ruin textiles, although it does sometimes ruin them very badly. It helps also to not drink wine, especially while spinning. That would be my main advice in this situation, is just don't do that. I used to be a lot more of a drinker than I was. There was a point in my life where I was drinking like 3 bottles of wine every single night just to fall asleep, which I do not do anymore. I drink like maybe once or twice a month, and just like 1 drink at this point. But yeah, in the past, so many of my textiles were stained with wine because I would just spill wine on them while I was working on them. Yeah, thankfully not a huge problem I have now. It is a lot, yeah. We are keeping the mixed fibers theme, yep. Completely unintentionally, but we have I would call it a 99% cotton, 1% wool blend is what we've got. It is identical to 100% cotton so far. Maybe it'll wash differently though. You never know. Yeah, I have been hoping that wine would be an interesting dye. I tried dyeing linen with wine at one point. I don't know my thought process behind it, other than that I was probably drunk. And all it did was permanently make the linen smell like wine. So don't try that if you want your linen to not smell like stale wine. And then I think it sort of stained it, but it didn't actually impart much color. It just made it a bit darker and much stinkier. So yeah, I don't really think you could dye cotton with wine either, because I've spilled. I mean, obviously, I just talked about it. Spilled wine on cotton and it washes out eventually. So that means at best you're staining it. You're not dyeing it. And typically, if you stain something, even as a way to color it multiple times, it's not really something that repeats well. And the more you do it, the worse it gets, the more muddy the color is. So yeah, it was gross. I was spinning this on the bus home earlier, and it was so much harder that I had kind of convinced myself that in the span of 1 hour of not spinning cotton, I'd somehow gotten way worse at spinning cotton. But no, I think it was just the bus. Spinning on the bus is usually not an issue, but when it's thread, I mean, this isn't. I don't know if I'd call this thread. Honestly, it's pretty thick for thread, but it's thin for yarn. It's very thin for yarn, so yeah, it's not easy on the bus. And then I was trying to crochet a very tiny bag that I'm making with this cotton yarn. And that wasn't going very well either, again, because of the bus. I need to get some bigger projects to work on the bus. That's my main project time, because I spend about 2 hours on it every day. So that's some good crafting time. Do I manage to spin on the bus with a supported spindle? Isn't that bumpier? Yes and yes. Yeah, it is definitely harder than spinning with a drop spindle on the bus. I think spinning with a drop spindle on the bus isn't that hard at all, other than the fact that if you drop it, it's harder to retrieve a lot of the time. But spinning supported on the bus is indeed very bumpy. It's a lot harder to draft, and it's harder to keep the hole in place too. It's not impossible, but really the main thing that makes it hard is just the fineness, because the movements that I'm doing are pretty small and controlled in comparison to if I was spinning some worsted weight 2-ply wool or something like that. So the movements of the bus have a lot more influence on it than they would for a thicker yarn. That's what makes it more difficult, at least to me. You're picturing taking a full loom on the bus. I would love to do that. That'd be so fucking funny. I've been considering bringing my sprung loom to work and on the bus. The only reason I haven't yet is because it's literally made of a bent branch, so it's pretty fragile. But I feel like it'd be really funny to actually be straight up weaving on the bus. And at work too. And I don't know anybody who knows sprung in real life, so it would be such a weird ass thing to be doing. It would be hysterical. People already think I'm very odd for knitting and spinning on the bus. I get a lot of looks. And I did before I was in a wheelchair too, so I don't think it's just the wheelchair. You have a sprung project. That's awesome. Nice. You're at the step of trying to understand what you're doing. Yeah, yeah. I'm about at that step myself. It's a long step, or at least it's been a long step for me. Like, I don't know. Maybe I know what I'm doing, but then actually doing it correctly is where I'm having troubles. My last project that I did, I managed to. Um, I don't even know what I did. That's the problem. I have no idea what I did to cause this issue, but I ended up with an issue of the like half of the shed had way more threads, um, and that should not be the case, and it was causing some real problems. I'm just hoping I don't manage to repeat that next time. Because it definitely changed the fabric that I was getting on the parts where I was having that uneven warp issue. The rest of the piece looks like actual normal sprung, and then that side looks like not sprung at all. Like it literally looks like normal weaving almost. It's really weird. You undid and redid maybe 10 times, 15 times. I can't tell what number that is. But you're not losing hope. Well, that's good. That's what matters. At least it's easy to undo also. Like, I definitely appreciate that about sprung. I remember when I was learning to knit, I was pretty crushed to realize that frogging is not as easy as it is with crochet. And then when I learned to spin, I was like, oh my God, you can't even undo it. Like once you've done it, it's kind of just done. So the fact that you can pretty easily undo sprung is appreciated for sure. But then also kind of a curse because of the accidental undoing of sprung. Maybe that's just a me problem, but I do have it a lot. Oh, hi, Chuck. That scares you a bit with knitting. I will say that, like, once you learn how to frog and tink, and get everything back on the needles, it becomes very easy to fix. Still not as easy as crochet, just because crochet is inherently just incredibly simple to frog. But once you learn how to fix your mistakes in knitting, it's not difficult anymore. Like when I realize I have to frog 15 rows, I'm usually not even upset. I'm just like, oh, okay, that's fine. But getting to that point is like you do have to consciously learn how to fix it. Better than null bending, though. I say that as someone who has done very little of it because I cannot fucking figure out how it works. Like I'm very bad at it. I haven't cracked it yet. But from what I can tell, if you want to undo your null bending, no. The answer is fuck you. Not happening. Because I've tried, and it's like, oh my God, it's so painful. Like barely even possible at all, and didn't seem worth it. After I had very painstakingly reclaimed about 6 inches of yarn, I was like, after 10 minutes of picking at the stitches, ugh. You don't even understand how null bending works. That makes two of us. I don't either. Which might be why I can't figure it out. Like, I get that it's loops on the thumb. It's loops, and then you make more loops, and then at points there are knots, and that is the entirety of what I've figured out after about 4 attempts. Like 4, 2 or 3 week-long attempts. Usually at that point I'm a little better at something, but not null bending. It's I don't know if it's like inherently more difficult or complex, or if it's just like there's not as much stuff on how to learn it or what, but gosh, I struggle. That's probably what I'm worst at out of every fiber I've ever tried. And there are some that I'm pretty bad at. So that's saying something. I really can't wait until my ginned cotton and my cotton cards come in. I've checked my like tracking information so many times at this point. They don't even have labels created, so it's been a futile effort. But like, I'm so enjoying this, even with frankly pretty badly prepared cotton, and cotton of a pretty bad quality as well. And it's still like coming out really well, at least for me, and still very enjoyable and very soft. Yeah. So I can only imagine, like, because I have spun some properly constructed punis before out of decent cotton, but not when I knew what I was doing and not at this level of fineness. I was trying to go for a chunkier spin. And also, I didn't really know what cotton, like how to spin cotton at that point. So they were wasted on me, is what I'm saying. So I'm hoping I'm gonna get like some pretty effortless yarn out of this. And the other thing I'm really excited about is that, like, with wool rollags, they go so fast. Like, it takes me about 30 seconds to make a rolag on an average day with an average batch of wool. And then, maybe it takes me like 2 minutes at most to spin it. But with the puni, because they're so tightly packed, and especially because I'm spinning something close to thread, it's lasting a very long time, which means very little fiber prep, like in relation to yardage, which is exactly what I'm going for, because the fiber prep is what's hard. The spinning is much easier. So, yeah, I'm hoping that I've lucked into a type of fiber prep I can do again, because I wouldn't need to do too much. That reminds you have an existential thing on spinning that will pass when you get to crocheting, probably. I need to be at a different angle so I can actually read. Hang on. Where you're never sure if you're actually making a different object or just ordering fibers in a way, bringing you to an abyss about what makes an object. That's an interesting point. Like, you're not wrong. Like, what is crochet or knitting other than your skein of yarn arranged slightly differently? Now you've done it to me too. I think the really interesting thing is that you can't necessarily say that about fiber to spinning in the same way, because you're adding actual stored energy to spinning. Like when you turn fiber from fiber into yarn, you're adding stored energy, and you're like doing a thing to it that feels like it fundamentally changes its substance. Whereas then taking that yarn and knitting or weaving or what have you with it, you are just kind of making it lay in a different way. Oh, that's so weird. I'm gonna have to say that at my crafting group at work. Make everyone else think about it too. They'll love it. So if you haven't, like if you don't crochet and you don't knit, what do you do with your yarn at the moment? Like, do you display it? Do you just like store it until you can do something with it, or do you have like other crafts? I'm curious. Your influence, yeah. I didn't get into spinning until I had already been knitting and crocheting for several years, so I've always used my yarn up. So I'm really curious, like what happens if you don't use it up. Oh, you weave a lot. Nice. You're a beginner on that as well. You wanted to get into spinning because it looked stimmy, and it is. Yeah. So true. I mean, like, I can definitely understand, like, why people spin and then don't even do anything with the yarn. The spinning itself is so enjoyable. It hardly even matters whether or not you do something with it. I'm definitely a process spinner. I also really enjoy working with hand spun yarn, so I do tend to use it. But yeah. Anyway, that's really cool that you're weaving with it. Weaving with hand spun is incredibly rewarding. Weaving in general, incredibly rewarding. That's why I got, like, that's almost the entire reason I got into fiber prep, was because it looked stimmy, and it is. It's like ultimate stems for me. I do also really enjoy a bit of like plain stockinette knitting while slightly rocking back and forth. It's just such a good motion. It's so nice. You tend to get, oh, I missed a bit. Let's see. The issue is at a point, there's a contradiction between doing the stimmiest spin or a good yarn. You tend to get overspun angry yarn. Yeah, that's a fair point. Like you do have to choose between um, just enjoying yourself and actually making a good functional yarn a lot of the time. Have you tried maybe like just using a slower spinning tool? Because that way you could probably just like, you know, let it spin for the same amount of time or put the same amount of effort into it. But if it's heavier and spins slower, then you won't add as much twist. That's I suggested because that is what I do with my wheel. I can't really control the speed at which I'm treadling very well. It's just really hard for me. So instead, what I do is I change the whorl that it's resting on, which is what affects how fast the bobbin is, or the flyer is actually moving over the bobbin. So I wonder if that might help for you. I don't know. Oh, hi, Chuck. She's got stuff to say. Don't knock that over. She's really big into knocking over trash cans. It is one of her hobbies, and I don't approve of it because she never picks the trash up. So you could try. You also like to try and spin thin, but once you'll manage it, that'll pass. Yeah, fair. Like just having increasing amounts of experience probably will help that issue quite a lot. That's a good point. And doesn't require you to get other tools, which helps. Chuck, what are you doing? It's being terrible. Leave the loom alone. I might actually have to go soon just to appease her, because the amount of trouble she can get into if she's mad is immense. Oh, no, such a terrible racist like that. Sorry about that very loud amount of noises. I had to stop it. He was very intent on making trouble. So I think I probably will have to go soon for the sake of my ears and also everybody else's ears. She is laying down, but I think at the sign of the next rustle, I'll probably go. I'm almost done, actually. There's only a tiny bit left. And I fit the majority of it onto the spindle, which I'm really pleased with. I think it's all going to fit on the spindle, for sure. I don't think I'm really running out of room. The way that I designed this particular spindle, it's sort of like a teardrop shape that tapers down to just a tube, I suppose. And I started the cop at the bottom of the teardrop, meaning that I can work my way up a little bit. I've got a little bit more room to spare. And it's definitely not too heavy to turn yet, although I don't think I can get quite as fine with it anymore. But yeah, it's holding a good amount. Like I said, I've never actually gotten to test how much it holds. So I'm pretty pleased. And the last time I spun very much on it, it was longer. I cut off 2 inches / 5 centimeters. I don't really know why. I guess just to see if I could make it smaller, which I could. It didn't really change very much about it, except that it doesn't fit in as many bowls anymore because it's too short. So lesson learned on that one. But yeah, it's my first real tryout of this spindle at its current incarnation. And I'm really liking it, especially because it's the first bird spindle I did, so looks so satisfying. Thanks, it is. It's very satisfying. There's something that's just inherently satisfying about a full spindle, you can't get better than a full spindle. It's also starting to clatter a little more, as it gets heavier, which makes sense because I thought it was sort of weirdly quiet at first. It must just be because it's really light. And then as I add more fiber to it, it gets heavier, so it actually jumps around more noise. Obviously that is a plus as well. I think I'm gonna see if I can finish this, because yeah, there's so little left, and my cat has walked away for now. So we're safe for now. For horrible rustling noises. One thing that I'm wondering if I'm going to get significantly better at or not is that I don't usually spin on supported spindles in this direction. I usually spin wool on supported spindles, or rather I've spun a ton of wool on supported spindles. And so that's just the motion that I'm used to making, and I can do it a lot faster and a lot stronger and easier than I can do the reverse motion, the one that I'm currently doing. And so I wonder if I'm actually going to get better at it, or if potentially that movement just can't be as strong, like you're at a disadvantage when trying to do that movement. I'm not sure. I'm hoping I get better at it, because I would like to be able to twist the cotton the correct way. It doesn't, I don't know how much it really matters in the grand scheme of things, but that's just the direction that I twist my cotton, and I would like to be consistent about it. So I thought that it was going to be a lot harder to film supported spinning, or to stream supported spinning, but I think it's not too bad. The angle could be better for sure if I had the opportunity to reset up. I think I could get it better, but it's not a huge pain. It's actually a lot easier to position than the spinning wheel is, because the spinning wheel is very wide. So I think I'll probably end up doing some more supported cotton spinning on stream, as long as there's interest in it anyway. That said, I'm interested, so that's almost enough on its own. It's a little hard to spin at this point now, I think, because I have very little fiber left, so it's sort of wanting to just fall apart, which, and that makes sense. The way that punis work is the friction. Because they're rolled super tightly, there's a lot of friction when you try to pull them out. Hi, Chuck. Which means it basically helps them stay together so much better. And then if you don't have that friction, then they don't stay together very well. And so you get a much less even yarn. And that's really just an issue with cotton from what I can tell. Or at least that's the only fiber I've ever spun that does this. But yeah, now I'm just at this little bit, and there's obviously no friction happening, except what I can make with my hands. So. You're always taking mental notes on supported spinning. That's a mood. Whenever I see other people supported spinning, which is not super often. They're always doing something I've never seen before, which is really cool. Like, I think generally speaking, because there's so many different types of spindles, and there's like every region has its own way of spinning. It gets to the point where like every spinner seems to spin a different way, which is really, really fun to watch. The last time I was at a fiber festival, I was watching a group of spinners do like a competition, spinning competition, and everyone's movements were so different. Everyone was like holding themselves a different way. It was really interesting. All right. I actually finished that. I didn't think I would on string. I do have a tiny bit of cotton left, but it needs to be recarded, and I don't have enough of it to recard, so that's all for now. I'm probably going to ply it tonight on, where is it? This is the bag that I have all my cotton stuff in at the moment. Probably going to apply it on my miniature drop spindle, because I found that it's very good at plying cotton, because it's really nice and light, and it also goes really fast, which is exactly what you want for cotton. But then it's also still comparatively much bigger compared to this tiny little bird spindle, so it can hold a full spindle's worth quite easily. So yeah, that's probably what I'll do for the rest of the afternoon. My cat wants me to stop, I know. She does. And now that I'm done spinning this, I think I am going to call it a night. Thanks for hanging out, doing some spinning. It was very enjoyable and very productive. I actually totally forgot that I'd also finished this. So that'll be fun to wash. I have to take some pictures once it dries. But yeah, I'm gonna sign off, do some more spinning in bed. I hope you have a good night.